Welcome to the show, everybody. We have made it on the air, and this guy to my right is obviously feeling better. All the well-wishers from last night, we're all concerned, and he's back, folks. Buddy, how you feeling?
Like everybody hates me tonight.
Yeah, well, that's a tough night for you. But, that's not this kind of a show. We'll have to get you on Dr.
Okay.
Phil.
Well, call me back when this kind of show works better.
All right. Well, we'll get you on Dr. Phil when you need it.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you very much.
That'll be good. Yeah. Well, I don't know. He's kind of expensive, so we'll use all that money. Maybe Allie can help us with that. Tonight, Allie Peek Wilber's on the show, checking in for us. David Molten, right behind that. We've got a Power Pack show, one of the most exciting shows of the week. It is Wednesday night. It is exciting. Buddy is home from the hospital, feeling better, feeling ready to go. And we are ready to go with your questions and answers in the chat room. It's going to be a great night right after this.
It's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye!
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
We are on. Hi, Allie.
Hi, Allie. You're the best thing that's happened to me today, Allie. I want you to know that, okay?
All right, well, I'm glad to hear it. I had no idea you were in the hospital. No one tells me these things. Thanks a lot, guys. Is everything okay now?
We're hanging. Physically, yes. It's all okay. So I was glad to get out. I don't know, make it about me because Brenden will want me to go on Dr. Phil, but it's just a thing I had. Little ticker problem, and fortunately it was just medication. Okay. And I got it fixed. I stayed 2 nights longer than I want to, which was 2 nights, and then today they finally released me and all is well. So happy. Good day when you can get out of the hospital, right?
Well, I'm glad that you are home.
Thank you,
Allie. You look like you've got this basketball NBA kind of a set going on tonight. The dark background, very dramatic. It's nice. It's like I'm watching the Lakers all of a sudden.
Lights are just off down there. I think maybe the street light's not out in front of my window, and it normally is, but
it looks very pro. I just got to say.
Thanks.
Hey, did you hear there was a game on Saturday?
I heard a little something about that. I was there. It was pretty rocking in the swamp.
Yeah. Where do you what first class seats do you get to sit in?
Okay, so this year we switched our seats. We used to be section 14, which was like about the 20-yard line on the Gators side, but they started an alumni season ticket block this season, which is
I saw that. Yeah.
That's ever happened. And so we switched into it. It's section 23, which is in the end zone. Yeah. Opposite end of the tunnel. And you know what? It's super fun. There's so many people that Eric played with that are in the stands. So like our kids all play together. There's, we got tickets. My dad got tickets and my brother did all in a row. So that's kind of fun as well. It's neat. It's different. I loved where our old seats were, but this has been a new experience, and it's kind of neat to watch it with, people
Well, that's pretty good because you had probably the best view of the end of the game, which seemed to be the big conversation.
We did, although Go
What
ahead.
was what was your perspective on that? Because I was out in the other end zone and I was trying to go see it. I didn't see much of it.
Well, when that happened, we had actually already gone down onto the field. So
Okay.
we totally missed it. We were literally starting to walk out on the field with everybody else and then had to be kind of rushed back to the sidelines. So I was not in a good position to see anything. But I will tell you, as soon as the game was over, the team was completely hyped. I mean, it was electric down there.
Yeah, it sure was. I think I was down there with you. I was part of those people on the field that had to tell to get off the field.
It was
I
hard
had
to see, right? So you
Yeah.
didn't really know exactly what was going on, but
Yeah, I was
Let me
literally
ask you a question, Allie. This is something that only someone like you could understand this, the depths of which. Someone asked me today about the game. Was I there? Yes. And so I didn't think you weren't there. Well, you wrote your column talking about at spurts. It was the loudest I've ever heard it in some places. The crowd was so enraptured with this whole situation. It was like a spiritual happening, and I think unless you were embedded as a Gator and you had that real royal true blue and orange and blue, you wouldn't get that.
yeah.
To me, this is one of the most significant wins. I don't care about whether they get to the playoffs, whether in terms of feel.
Mhm.
To have basically lost it.
Yeah.
The magic was gone from the Swamp.
Yeah.
The question is, were you ever going to get it back again?
Right.
And it's almost like it was a betrayal of a romance or something. The fans were, it was a breach. That night, it seemed like it came back, to me at least. And do you agree?
I do. I mean, it was, I think that I've heard the Swamp louder at points in time, but it's been a very long time. And I think, the thing that was interesting to me about Saturday night is Florida was in control of that game for the most part. There was a beginning part of the first quarter where they weren't in control, but then as soon as they scored and then they just really never looked back after that. And the fact that the stadium stayed incredibly loud the entire time with a lead, I actually think is kind of more impressive, right? It's easy to get loud when the game is on the line and you think like, okay, we could pull it out. If we make this stop here, we could score, we could win. You can understand fans getting amped. But Florida was in control most of the game, and it was still wild and crazy. Fans didn't let up. Like, they didn't want the team to take their foot off the gas. They didn't want Tennessee to get a single inch. And that was kind of the most impressive part. But the stadium was alive again.
It was.
People
It really was. Yeah.
believe again.
Yeah, and I don't know what that means. I'm not saying, okay.
Right. It doesn't mean anything
they're
yet.
better than any team. I don't know what it means. I just know that it feels like something genuine is taking place, and it's not a temporary thing. It's I don't want to say revival, but it just feels like it's different. It feels like it's good again, doesn't it?
It feels like they're on the right track, right? I think that, Joe just said Gators and Napier made a statement. They did. That's exactly.
And thank you, Joe, by the way, for your super chat donation right away.
Florida,
because you're here.
Yeah, and he's right? Like Napier needed a statement. Florida needed a statement. Fans needed to know that things were headed in the right direction. Does it mean we're running the table? No. Does it mean Florida's going to finish 10-2? Probably not. But it means that the building blocks are there. It means that we've already improved from last season because we were 0-4 against our rivals last year. Right now, we're 1-0. Even if they lose the other 3 games, they still went 1-3 instead of 0-4. There is some improvement there that tangibly that we can see. I think the defense got meaner, got angrier. They're bigger. They were faster. We can actually see improvement as opposed to just listening to Napier saying like, hey, this is not the same team that it was last year. They showed us that.
They did. Yeah. So what does it mean, Allie? What does it mean? Does it mean that Billy Napier is the man? Does it mean that there are things that are happening organically that, in the interior program? Does it mean that Florida football is back? I know it's hard to say all those things, but what you see, what do you see from that?
I think it means continue to have patience. I don't think Florida football's back yet, but I think Florida football is headed in the right direction. And I think when Florida plays up to the level that they're capable of, we saw that Saturday night, that they can probably hang with anybody on the schedule. Now, does that mean that they consistently show up every single week and play to the best of their abilities? That remains to be seen. But when they play their game like we saw on Saturday, I don't think there's anybody that isn't beatable. So it means on to the next, right? We go to the next. Charlotte will use as a tune-up, get these young guys some more reps under their belt. And then you got to go into Lexington. If you can beat Kentucky in Lexington, which, by the way, Kentucky is 0-11 against Florida when that game kicks off at 1 p.m. or earlier, which I think is a pretty crazy stat. If they can beat Kentucky, that means they're 2-0 against our rivals so far. And that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that we saw, and I don't mean to switch sort of gears, but the step in the right direction for this team, but also there were a lot of recruits in the house that night. It just turned around behind me at one point and you see all of, the whole one bench is full of IMG guys. And obviously DJ Lagway was there and then they had the recent recruit to the 2025 recruit that signed up. The running back, his name is, and that, the rumors are there is a bunch more coming now, is what they say, because now they want to be there. How much do you know about any of that stuff? As far as have you heard other people? Was this the turning point per se to be in the Swamp, to see that they could be a part of something so amazing? Because you can't. There's a lot of beautiful, great stadiums, but outside of like a handful of SEC, stadiums, and then maybe like Michigan and a couple other ones are going to play for Deion or whatever. But, do you see, have you heard anything, as far as, is there a bunch of people coming our way now?
So, Florida doesn't have a room for a bunch of people to be coming our way. They will probably sign, this is an estimate, 3 more people, maybe a little bit more depending on who, decides to come or flip or whatever. I know that there's at least one guy that should be popping relatively soon for the Gators that was there, that was impressed. I know there's a lot of guys in the 2025 class they were there, but it was really neat also to see the guys already committed to Florida. Like I watched Fletcher Westfall's family, videotaping and taking it all in, things like that. I think that solidified even more in the minds of those guys. And we talked about this on the show before, but there's probably not going to be a better night in the Swamp than that one.
No,
because
no.
There are huge, huge games on the horizon, games that Florida may very well lose. It's going to be hard to recreate what happened on Saturday night.
Allie, just like when you get a great meal sometimes, and the steak's cooked just right, and the red wine's perfect, and the baked potatoes perfect, and it's a beautiful night, and the music's playing. You cannot recreate that.
No,
you're going to enjoy it right at that moment.
Opener of the SEC, and not only SEC, but an SEC East opponent, somebody who beat Florida last year, somebody that had a lot of hype. They were ranked number 11. Like, it is going to be hard to recreate that moment. I saw Joe said, Florida State, and that has the possibility as well. But we potentially have suffered multiple losses between now and then. So, that can affect the atmosphere. But this was a great game for all of those recruits. And this is going to be the Swamp in its prime. Honestly, it was the loudest I've heard it in a while. I think there were some times that were similar when we played Alabama a couple of years ago, but it wasn't sustained through the entire game because towards the end, Florida was not, Florida really wasn't in it at the very end of that game. But the fans did a great job. And I think it was great for the current players to see it because I don't know that any of these current players have really experienced the Swamp in its most intense. Utah was great last year, and the stadium was hyped.
Yeah, I was going to say, Utah felt similar to a Utah, but this, like you talked about this, it wasn't sustained like it was through the whole thing.
This one, beating Utah to open the Napier era was great, and it was huge. It ended up not meaning a whole lot by the end of the season, but I just think that Tennessee, it's a rival, it's an SEC East, like this meant something. And, had we lost it, I don't want to say that meant that the Napier tenure was over or it meant bad things, but this was really important. This made Gator fans take a breath. Okay, Utah was bad, but we fixed a lot of the issues that we had. If we play our game, we can hang with anybody. And
it was the oasis in the desert, the water that they haven't had in a long time, and I think that was a lot of the excitement. And we talked last night about how the fan experience is even changing to some degree. With the new lights and with the DJ, and you've got. It's sort of geared to a younger audience, which I think is exciting for, to get that, to get obviously your local fan base and your students back involved. I felt that was something missing in the past, and they're very much so geared that way. And I think that was a smart thing.
Yeah. And, it was good to see a lot of our friends, our old guys from 06 and 08 came back that were on the sidelines, guys that honestly, I haven't seen in games in years. Like we've never stopped going. We've gone all along, but guys that were in different places because of work or even football and different places with their families and stuff that had the ability to come back. And those guys have something to teach these young players. Even just in the kind of the attitude and the swagger that they can carry, what the Florida standard was, what it could be again, how to hype up the guy sitting next to you. I talked to Steve Harris this week, and one of the things he was saying is that he laid into the defensive line because they sat down on the bench when the offense was on the field in the first quarter. And he's like, I thought I was going to get kicked out, but they had to know, no, you got to be cheering them on. You don't get to take a break. You need to, be out there supporting your team. And those are kind of things that you don't know until you know, if that makes sense. And there's been so much turnover on this team. They're so young that maybe they needed, some of these older guys to show them the ropes again.
Well, look, it's wide open right now. We know the whole conference is wide open. We saw it happen. The big dogs, except for the Georgia Bulldogs, are not eating at the trough right now.
And shoot, Georgia didn't even look good on Saturday.
That's true. There's going to be that. But now is the time when this team, a middle-of-the-pack team, is going to rise up. I don't know if it's Ole Miss, or rise up somewhere and at least contend. It could be Florida. And I like what Billy said. We can still play better. Now, that's what I want to see. If they play better than they played the other night, this team is decent. They never mind number of wins, quantify, whatever. I know what I see. You know what you see. You can feel it. And this team has got the goods. Now, will it deliver this year at the championship? No. But they're in contention. And when you're in contention, anything can happen. And so I like that they're in contention. I like what their style about. They can run the football. They can play defense. We saw some of the things corrected. And what we really saw was Billy Napier coached how to correct mistakes.
Yep. And I think that's what Gator fans needed to see outside of special teams, which still need kind of overhaul, and hopefully that, will happen down the line. Austin Armstrong has basically remade this defense in one offseason. This team looks incredibly more disciplined than they were. They look hungrier. They look like they know what they're doing, which I feel like at times, they were incredibly lost last year. Our tackling is better. One of the things that Eric had pointed out to me in the game, which is not something that I necessarily think about, but he was like, the first person that gets to the ball carrier or the receiver isn't necessarily there to make the tackle. Sometimes they're there to slow them down so that a gang tackle can immediately follow. And he's like, but we weren't seeing gang tackling last year at all. But we are this year. Guys are hustling to the place that they're supposed to be. Their intensity is there. And, there is massive improvement. There's still room to grow, right? It's not like we're out of this world, but we're top 10 in total defense right now. And we've played 2 teams ranked in the top 15. And that's more than most teams, in college football can say right now. So there's some improvement, but how about Graham Mertz as well? For all the concern that people had in this offseason, he is doing exactly what we are hoped that he would. He's a game manager, but honestly, he's even more than a game manager, right? Yeah. He's making smart decisions. And so his ceiling may not be what AR's is, but it seems like his floor is higher.
I don't disagree with that. And I feel like he's a leader, right? And I think AR didn't, he more was more of a silent type of leader. And a lot of it like to let his play sort of speak for itself. But he often talked in post-game and press conferences that he's working on leadership. This was something that you could clearly tell that this was something he was trying to get better at. Where you see Mertz as a natural born leader, in the huddle, and you especially when you're out in the field out there, you get the sense that these guys want to play for him, right? Because I think that's very important in that position. And they believe, right? So I think that's a huge part of it.
And that honestly is going to be so important moving forward, because ideally Graham Mertz is the guy next year too. You don't want to throw DJ Lagway into the schedule that Florida has next season as a true freshman. So the ideal situation is for him to put together a great season this year and then go ahead and do it next year too, so that Lagway has an opportunity to watch and learn and not get murdered with the craziest SEC schedule that we've seen in as long as I can possibly remember. And I think that prior to the season starting, most people didn't see that as a viable option, but it is. And I think bigger picture, it tells us the kind of talent evaluator that Napier is. He went out and got the person he wanted. He didn't settle, which was the narrative this entire summer. I think he knew what he was getting.
Now, Allie, I want to ask you a question before I go to break here. If I had to say you were a scout and you're saying, what are the 2 or 3 strengths of this team that they will be able to rely upon in the final part of the season, what are they? But before you answer that question, let me tell you about Titan MRI, one of our sponsors. Titan MRI is worth a short drive to Gainesville from Ocala and other places. No insurance, no problem. You can pay with cash or card. Same-day scheduling if you need it. Start feeling better today, because Titan MRI is North Central Florida's premier independent MRI facility. Premier independent MRI facility. Come see why hundreds of patients are visiting our Gainesville office from Ocala, Marion County, Leesburg, Bronson, Chiefland, and all points south. TitanMRI.com. All right, Allie, what do you think? Lean on 3 things this team does now for the second half to push through.
I think that this team does not make many mistakes on offense, and I think that is going to be a strength. I think the fact that the defense can get off the field, we're not seeing the 3rd and Grantham like we saw, I guess 3rd and Tony last season, but, that seemed to have plagued this team for the last few years. And I think that our quarterback, which I guess this kind of goes with one, Graham Mertz makes good decisions, and I think that's going to carry us through. But the defense, and I would say Austin Armstrong as a whole, his defensive scheme, I think that if you look at the Tennessee game, we maybe were caught off guard at the very beginning, but Armstrong made adjustments. And I don't know that we've seen defensive adjustments the last several years. So if you couple that by the fact that we're able to actually get off the field when we're on defense, I think it bodes well. Florida's not more than likely going to get into a track meet with teams, but if they can control the clock like they did against Tennessee, I mean, look at the time of possession going into half was like insane. If they can eat clock like that, get their defense off the field, they are going to win some football games that people did not think they were going to win this year.
I agree. We did discuss a couple of times, and just off, and you see it a lot in sort of national media. I think a lot of people are saying, well, Tennessee's not that good. Tennessee is not as good as advertised. Joe Milton is not as good as
a little bit too big for their britches, I might add. Okay, Tennessee's talking smack. Come back and
you see it today.
Ready for the swamp now.
Tennessee went from their fans telling us that they were going to, beat us by 30 points to then being like, oh, congratulations, you beat a pretty bad Tennessee team. Well, which is it? Because on Friday, you were telling me that they were going to crush us. And then on Sunday, you're telling me they weren't very good.
What happened? What went wrong? Something went wrong.
Something went wrong.
The Florida Gators in the swamp. That's what it went wrong.
Yeah, I think the stadium played a huge role in that. I think that the Gators were well prepared. I think that Austin Armstrong made good adjustments. I think that Graham Mertz made good decisions. And is that Vols team all world? No, they aren't. They're going to lose more ball games. They're probably not that great. They were the number 11 team in the country going into that, and Florida won. So let's put the feather in our cap and move on,
Well, the question is, I think you're kind of glad that you've got Charlotte, but at the same time, you got a very bad Charlotte team. And I think you obviously worry about, the come down off of a big win. I think you're probably glad now that you don't have that, sort of thing to worry. It's like you're not going into a Florida State. You're not going into an LSU. You're not going into Georgia, where, that.
Team, right? They're young. And so they've got to learn how to build from one week to the other. And I'm sure that this week Napier's probably working on controlling egos because, hey, listen, we had success. All of a sudden we've got guys that won Players of the Week this week. We got Coach of the Week. We got all these different things.
With the Doak Walker. Yeah.
And like, we're good all of a sudden. And now it's Napier's job to be like, okay, listen, you got better, but now there's a whole lot more room for us to continue to improve with. And it is probably good that Charlotte is this week because maybe they don't take practice as seriously. Maybe there's a learning period that has to happen here, right? Like they're going to have to learn to deal with success. Just like they're going to have to learn to deal with failure when that happens too. You played a good game. Now it's over. Now it's time to focus on the next one. It's Charlotte. I saw Kingsley Iguakin is going to be out again this week. I think that's precautionary, but so that helps too, right? Trey Wilson is banged up. We don't, it's nice that we have this week before we go to Kentucky because Kentucky's one that Florida really needs. They need to get that monkey off their back, I think. Yeah,
I agree. And I think you have, you have that ability to kind of heal up a little bit and get ready and sort of, gear up for that obviously, which will be a huge, that's your next, I think you're off the must win schneid a little bit, but you definitely are, you got a little red ass waiting for you in Kentucky, right? You got a little payback. You want to go into their house and give them a little something, and it would be that would be, a really good win, for Billy and the Gators because of what happened and the record that Kentucky had last year coming into the Swamp. You'd like to go into Lexington and give that back to them.
Right now, they're all good wins.
They are.
Charlotte,
for sure.
They're all good wins.
Yeah, you can't afford to start thinking like that. You think about this team right here, Charlotte. What are you trying to prove? You're trying to show you can have the same kind of consistency that you had last week. You know what you can do with the football. You can run it. The defense can make plays. Austin Armstrong can call defense. You build on that and you just play your game and you're going to be okay. What we know is this team is not a dog like someone suggested. That Billy's not a Yahoo like someone's saying. And this team can be in competition. I didn't say win. Just go out and give your best shot, do the things you got to do it. And now won a couple of games. Next thing you know, you won 3, won 4, won 5. Now you're in it. That's how you have to do it. You really can't think. It's the old cliche, but you can't think ahead of what you got in front of you right now. Let's see what David Molten does about that. Sweet and Sour program is on the air right now. There's the sour right there.
Mr. Molten, how are you, sir? I don't
He's
think he hears us.
Sour right now.
That's all right. We'll come back to him because I want to go to break really fast. We'll do our break. Allie, are you going to hang with us for a little bit, or you got mom duties?
For a little bit.
All right, cool. We'll hear from Belden Law, one of your sponsors, by the way. Allie.
Yes, they are.
All right, we'll be back with David Molten and Allie Peek Wilber, Buddy Martin, back from the IR right after this.
Back to Swamp Kings, I think I was impressed. I really didn't understand how hard he worked, how hard Urban Meyer worked at getting that team ready to compete in the SEC and on a national stage.
You think maybe Gator fans will value their championship legacy just a little bit more now?
I hope so. I never got it. I didn't understand why people didn't say take Urban at his word when he said he was really sick. I understand that he went back, to Ohio State, but he did take a year off and do his ESPN thing. And it's in your blood when you're a college coach. It's almost like you're willing to sacrifice your life in order to have the ability to lead a team to a national championship.
No doubt. I'm going to issue an invitation to you right now. Urban's coming to Gainesville the week of Vanderbilt. And I'm going to take him out to Spurrier's for bite to eat, and you're invited. How's that sound?
I would love to do that. Actually, his daughters both won the Meldon Law TV 20 Scholar Athlete.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And so we got to know the family a little then. And, I'll tell you, Urban really should be admired by Gator fans, and they should understand that he was here for 6 years? 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
6 years. Nowadays, that's a long time in a coach's career, right?
Exactly,
and they're like, oh, he jilted us. It was like, my girlfriend dumped me,
Oh, Jeffrey Meldon, we talk over those 5 minutes. You never mentioned law one time.
Yeah. So anyhow, we are really excited at Meldon Law. We've been getting a lot of calls from people who already have cases that are asking us for second opinions.
Yeah.
And
I want to talk to you about that next time we're on the air.
We are back on the program. It's the Meldon Law, Jeffrey Meldon. Always fun. We're going to bring in to the program one Mr. David Molten. Hello, Mr. Molten.
What's up, Sour?
How is everyone this evening?
Medium
better
rare.
than we were last week. How are you this evening?
Well, I'm good. I would think everybody'd be in a great mood.
Yeah, it's a pretty good week. We've had lots to talk about. How's been the fallout? Oh, not the fallout. How's been the reaction on your program?
Well, I think what we were talking about a week ago, that a lot of Gator Nation was rooting for Napier, but they were not buying in. And I think that this win, if it hasn't bought everyone in, it's bought 60+% of them in, and it's bought him time with the other 40%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I sort of was fairly down on him, and I picked Tennessee to win the game. But it's hard not to like him afterwards. I'm not afraid. Look, I'm a Gator fan. I have been for life, but I think I can feel that. Like you said, you bought some time. I really want to see what you can do, because this is who I thought you were in the fall. Right? Or it's in the fall. This is what we thought when we saw practice. This is who we hoped you were, before Salt Lake and all that.
Well, I'm not saying this so that Allie and I can pat ourselves on the back, but
yes, you are.
No. But we just saw the Utah game.
I think. David. Don't break your arm.
No. But it's funny. If four people could walk into a museum and they could look at a painting and they could see it 4 different ways, or 2 of you could see it one way and 2 of you could see it another. And I just remember how distinct Allie and I saw the Utah game. We didn't see it as the disaster that so many people saw it as. We saw it as some of this could be explained, I should say. 4 new offensive linemen, not having the starting center. They were not going to win that game. And that's a much tougher place to play. It's not Death Valley on a Saturday night, but they've lost 1 game there in 3+ years. I mean, they're top 15 team in the country. And, the double coverage, give up a 75-yard touchdown. In theory, they're not going to do that again. They only gave up 200 yards defensively the rest of the game. That was the defense we saw against Tennessee. The push up front, getting in Milton's face. Okay, they were very rarely out of position. The mistakes that they made against Utah, they didn't make against Tennessee. About the only knock I think you can come out of the Tennessee game with is that Billy got conservative in the second half. We'll see if in a closer game will he stay that tight with his play calling, and we're still not seeing the big downfield pass plays in the offense. But my goodness, I mean, Allie, I don't know about you, but if you had said to Gator Nation before the season, hey, 2-1 and the losses to Utah, and who wouldn't have signed up for that?
I think clearly Vegas thought that Tennessee was going to beat Florida, and You know, when you look at ESPN's the 5.5 game prediction prior to the season starting, they didn't think Florida was going to beat Tennessee. So I think most Gator fans would be pumped with 2-1. And the interesting thing about Tennessee, we talked about this last week, is that like if you lose to Tennessee, it becomes harder to find wins on the schedule. But now that Florida has beaten Tennessee, it becomes a heck of a lot more likely to look at Florida going into Georgia at potentially even 6-1, which I mean, that's a higher win total than Vegas thought Florida was going to have for the entire year. So I think Tennessee was one of those coin flip games, and Florida decisively won it, even with conservative play calling in the second half, which I will say at least Napier copped to that in his press conference too. He said, I probably called it a little bit too conservatively in the second half. So like, all right, you were able to be self-reflective. Now, if you can fix special teams for me, I would, really be a happy girl over here. But, Florida will beat Charlotte this weekend, 99% chance.
100. I think it's 100.
Because
Let's go say 100. We're going to guarantee that. It's a
100.
lock.
Well, we never say it's a lock. We never say it's 100%, but more than likely, Florida takes care of business against Charlotte. Then they go to Lexington, and they have a great chance to beat this Kentucky team that they haven't been able to take care of business against the last couple of years. And then at that point, you're like, all right, that South Carolina team looked beatable. That Vandy team is not good. So all of a sudden, you find yourself in a pretty, interesting position. You could be 3-0 against the SEC East heading into Georgia, and that's not a position many people thought the Gators would be in.
Yeah. If I could jump in here, I want to change the topic just for a second. I just got off the phone with my friend Buddy Page around the horn, and he told me about the production meeting they had today when all the guys who wanted to do college football generic stuff. And what he said, are you guys crazy? We've got the Tim Tebow story right here, right now going on. Everybody wants to talk about Coach Prime. This is the topic du jour. Okay, well, we'll go with that. They just killed it in the ratings. So they call me the producer now. But that story has taken wing, not just because of the novelty of Deion Sanders, because there's something that rings genuinely with Deion Sanders. I've talked to coaches about it. I felt it when I listened to his post game. He's a very spiritual man. Whether you are not, that's an important point to some people. I think this guy is a hell of a football coach in the making. Because, well, that was just one game. That's a sample size. Too small. No, it's not too small when you see what the guy can do. He's got something going on here that's really special. Let's be honest about it. The African-American nation is really happy to see another one. Their Mel Tucker disgraced her, and now Deion Sanders is making them be proud again. So aside from that, I think he's the best story in college football, period, right now.
Oh, well, there's no question he's the biggest story. I mean, 9.3 million people watched Colorado State from 10:20 p.m. Eastern till 2:30 a.m. Eastern.
That's about 10 years of all this.
And I have to admit I was exhausted. I went to bed at halftime. But that time slot last year averaged 1.7 million people. 9.3 million. That's like the third highest rated SEC game of the year on CBS, 9.3 million. I mean, here's what I'm curious about this week. Will Colorado, Oregon, 3:30 on ABC, outrate Ole Miss, Alabama, 3:30 on CBS?
What do you think?
Well, listen, how many
100%.
years now?
Absolutely.
This is my 18th season being part of the SEC on CBS.
Mhm.
Alabama has never played a game with Nick Saban as head coach the last 17 years at 3:30 Eastern and not won the time slot. Period.
Okay.
End of sentence.
Good to know.
So that is another bar as to just how big of a phenomenon this is. I mean, think about it. They've played TCU, Nebraska, and Colorado State. This is Colorado.
Yeah.
Okay. And they've averaging 8.5 million people per broadcast. These are huge numbers. Florida, Tennessee did 5.3 million. Colorado State did 9.3 million.
Yeah, what's that 60? Let me ask you a
Unreal.
question. David, let me ask you, and Allie and Brenden, how did we miss this story?
I don't think we did. I think we're all
I
over it.
We
We're
did.
watching.
I think
we did.
everybody.
I think we
Yeah.
did.
I
I
mean,
think we now are on it. But why was there such reluctance to say this guy might be a hell of a football coach? Because there's an inherent kind of feeling about a guy who's looks like he's a publicity hound. And here comes one of these guys who wants to be about. It's not even about him necessarily. We misjudged his character, I think. That's my opinion. And that was a major mistake.
Well, we didn't see much at Jackson, so we didn't get the, you heard grumblings, you hear this, I just think we missed it because we haven't seen it.
I watched him. I watched him when he was coaching the kids.
I get it, but I mean, it's a different deal when you sit, when you go and play, bigger college football. When you go to D1, you see it. I feel like we talked about it. I think most of us just talked about he's either going to be great or awful, and and I think what. My opinion, one of the great things he did was he got into the culture of the place that he was. Boulder wasn't an easy place to be accepted, right?
That's a story. Alex saw it. She knew about this guy.
I think that the sample size was so small, though, at Jackson State, and obviously Colorado saw it, but Colorado.
I hate that phrase, sample size. I mean, the sample size of Spurrier at Duke wasn't very good either. Okay. I hate that phrase.
And it had to be the right place to take a chance on him, right? Colorado didn't really have a whole lot to lose. They were terrible. They play in a conference where if they could turn around, they could immediately skyrocket to the top, which is kind of different than some other places. And Deion is football savvy. Colorado is the smartest place in the country for him to have gone. He turned that roster over, and he's going to have a legitimate chance at a conference title year one and every year that follows. And with the playoffs expanding, he doesn't even have to play a tough schedule, and he can be in there. It's honestly, it's genius on his part. But I can understand why, we could say, yeah, he's a great coach, and he did well that one year. I'm interested to see how he does in Colorado, but I don't think we missed anything by not predicting that he was going to, be 3-0, and he's going to be a great football coach no matter what his schedule or his ranking or his schedule finishes at the end of the year. But we still have seen 3 games. Let's see what he does against Oregon. Let's see what he does against USC. But yeah, I mean, it's an incredible.
I don't have to see it. I've seen enough to me to believe he's a hell of a football coach to me.
Oh, I agree. He's a hell of a football coach. I he's done great things, and I think he's leading in a way that is incredibly bold, and maybe college football coaches that don't have his pedigree as the player that he is could say. But when he gets up there, he speaks his truth. He doesn't hold back. He's not concerned about being fired. He doesn't care what people's opinion is or whether he offends them or not. But he says some good things. I don't know if you saw, the player that hit Travis Hunter is getting death threats. His family.
Oh, yeah.
Travis Hunter's got a long road to recovery now, and it's a terrible situation. And Deion said basically, like, I've forgiven him. Travis has forgiven him. He's a hell of a player. He made a mistake. He couldn't have known that this was going to be the outcome. He doesn't deserve these things. And I thought that was really important and awesome that he came out and said those things, because he's right.
Yeah.
David?
Well, I'm a huge Deion guy. I have been since I delivered a pizza to Deion Sanders 35 years ago when he was a minor league ball player.
Yeah. He was playing. Read on the column. That's the first paragraph right there. I delivered a pizza to Deion Sanders. That's great. Write it, man.
He was a AAA baseball player for the Columbus Clippers with the Yankees. They played a doubleheader in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre against the then Red Barons. And somebody from the clubhouse called Domino's, and I was working there part-time, and ordered a pizza. Meet us at the Lackawanna Hilton at such and such a time. And I showed up. It was my delivery, and they were getting off the bus, and we had no idea who we were delivering it to. It turns out it was Deion Sanders, and Deion points at me and says, "Hold on one second." And there was about 30 kids that wanted his autograph, and he signed every single autograph, gave me a very nice tip, and went into the Lackawanna Hilton with his equipment and a small cheese pizza.
That's a great story, David. It really is. Wow.
So
Well, it's
I'm in
always
the, I'm in the tank for Deion. Have been since either 89 or 90. Whenever
did
I
he drop
delivered
like
that
a C
pizza.
note on you? Like what kind of tip are we
Well, the
talking
pizza
about
was
here?
$5.95, and he was in
Right.
the minors, but he did give me a $10 bill and say keep it. And a $4 tip on a $6 pizza is a pretty nice tip.
That's pretty good. That's pretty
Yeah,
good.
I was impressed.
Well, what this is what I guess I caddied a lot, growing up. So I caddied for like Neuheisel and Spurrier and some other interesting college coaches and stuff. And I always said, the really big overdone tippers are probably not those are the guys that are trying to be a little flashier. The guys that give you like the right amount of tip that, a good person or whatever talk to you, they're probably better kind of guys at the end. So I always ask people, well, if you waited tables on so and so or whatever, what kind of a tip did you get? Because I think that's interesting.
I do think that if they're going to be 3 touchdown underdogs against Oregon, probably 3 touchdown underdogs to USC. It'll be interesting if they get drilled these next 2 games. I mean, this is a team that people are beginning to figure out. Defensively, they're not strong. Offensively, they're scoring like 10 less points every game. So people are beginning to kind of hone in on them a little bit. And the schedule, Pac-12's got 8 ranked teams, and they're in the Pac-12, and they're going to play 7 of them. I mean, the schedule's actually getting harder here, and they barely beat Colorado State. I'll be curious how people will react to this story if they begin to struggle.
Yeah.
But if their games did not go till 2:30 in the morning, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. I'll be thrilled I get to watch that game this week before my night game. Yes.
Well, like my mom always says, but the true mark of a person's character is not how they act when, everything's going for them. It's how they act when the chips are down. I think we'll see that moment for Deion this year where it's going to get tough. And, that schedule, I think CU's been playing out of their mind. I think if Colorado State doesn't come out and give them locker room material and poster board material about, making this personal, you don't give him sort of the fuel, the fire and get them up for that game. This team's been playing out of their mind in a lot of ways. And I think you're going to have a come down there at some point. And you got to go on the road and play at a premier facility. I think they're number 1 in the NIL. I think so far is because they've got all the money, right? So it will be interesting to see how they perform there, and we'll see how Deion sort of acts when but a lot of ways he's already won, right? He's already won the hearts and minds. They could probably lose the rest of the games. People are still going to like them because CU sucked so bad for so long.
Well, Ali, it's funny to change from Deion back to Napier and the Gators. Napier this week is already, cautioning people, and not so much for Charlotte, but he's just kind of like, guys, it was one game. We played pretty well. And to me, and I'm curious what everyone thinks, so how much room is left between what the Gators showed Saturday and whatever the ceiling is for this team? That to me, because I think if they play like they did Saturday, they can still go 8-4. I don't know how much better they have to play than they did Saturday to beat the Kentuckys and the South Carolinas and A&M and all the teams that in theory are toss-up games. The question is there more to this group? Will we get a somewhat dynamic passing game at some point to really threaten to score some points? Because you're probably going to need them to beat Georgia, LSU, Florida State. That you probably need another level. And now we have 9 more games to see whether or not they've got that in them.
Well, I think, first of all, the second half, we really saw absolutely nothing because Mertz was a little bit banged up, right? So we saw him hand the ball off. The game was, under control and really tried absolutely nothing fancy. So I think that there is probably more to this team offensively than we have seen so far. I don't think they needed it to be anything more against Tennessee. Defense is a little bit different because I do think the defense will improve each week, but it's the experience and the greenness kind of going away that's going to be how that ceiling gets raised. So I don't think that's something that okay, against Kentucky, we're going to see a defense that's like 5 notches higher than we saw against Tennessee. I think they'll get better as the season goes on, but I don't know that that's like a super quick process. But the good news is they were good, right? I think the offense is more where I think we could potentially see more down the road, and we didn't need it, but also they didn't want to risk Mertz, with the hands being banged up. And he's fine, but like, why? Why take a risk? Why when you don't need to?
Yeah. Well, my thing is, the swamp is a wonderful asset to have. It's you really have a huge advantage at home field. I would like to see what this team looks like again, having them seen on the road.
Yeah.
If they go out and get blown out in Kentucky, then that you're talking about. Okay, well, 6-1 the other here. So I want to see how they perform outside the swamp again. So I think the Kentucky game will really give us a sort of a good understanding of where this team is. I really loved Austin Armstrong on Saturday. Yeah. I loved watching him on the sidelines. He was like giving the chomp, and I mean, he was so electric. And I know those players fed off of that, and that's what you hoped and wanted to see. So I want to see a lot of that and how that translates on the road, because when you get 90,000 Gators screaming, beautiful multi-million-dollar LED lights, everyone's singing Tom Petty. I mean, it's hard not to be Tennessee and go. Even Tennessee fans like, okay, this is a pretty crazy place right now.
The good thing for them is Kentucky won't be a more difficult atmosphere than Utah was, to be honest with you. Now, South Carolina could be different.
Not at noon, right?
Right. I mean, so for the next few weeks, I think this young team, and they are still very young in a lot of spots. But, the one area that I've been wrong about this team right now is, this quarterback has so far played better than I thought he would play. He's played better than he has at any point in his career. I mean, he was a 59% passer for 3 years, and he's completing over 70% of his passes. He deserves a lot of credit. The coaching staff deserves a lot of credit. Let's face it, Alabama would kill to have Florida's quarterback right now. Kill.
Which is wild, given all the noise we heard this summer. And we talked about this before you got on, David, but I really do think it speaks to the bigger picture of Billy Napier as a talent evaluator. He saw something in Mertz that pretty much everybody else didn't see, and he was right. Mertz we talked about all he needed to be was a game manager, and that Florida had enough weapons around him. But he's been more than a game manager so far. He's been a leader.
Yeah,
and I guess that's why he did what he did when he didn't go get another quarterback in the portal.
He's also a thinker as well as a leader. That's what impressed me about it. He thought this thing through well, and I liked his cerebral approach to it. He knew what he wanted to do. He had a plan, and he didn't change it when people began to scream at him. So I think that's a mark of a leader right there. A guy who knows what he wants. He made some mistakes. He corrected the mistakes, and he still stuck to what he believed.
And he's
this
got
whole thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And he's got thick skin, which
he had thick skin. Exactly. He took the heat. He took it. So I think that stands them in good with a guy like that. And he made a very good point to talk about the camaraderie of these guys. They cared about each other. I love the quote from Mertz. And you hear this all the time, but this time it sounded genuine. I love those guys in the locker room. I love it. I've heard a lot of coaches talk about that. It's a great common denominator of great teams. Sometimes it seems real, and sometimes it's not. This time, it sounded real to me. Allie?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, David, I think that this team cares about each other. I think that they're bought in. I think they still need to learn a little bit about what the standard is. They need to learn a little bit about what it really feels like to win at a big high level, because none of these guys have, this at this point is the biggest game most of these guys have won. I mean, I guess you could maybe say Utah last year, but I would argue that this one's bigger. So they don't have experience in that, and that's not something that you can easily teach. So they're going to kind of have to learn together, but they're getting there.
Yeah. David, who else you like? Who else you like in that for a top 10 right now? which team will emerge from 8 or 9?
Well,
or 10?
we were talking about this last week when, I think all of us, or at least 3 of the 4 of us, picked Florida to win. That, there has not been a lot of greatness out there yet. I mean, to me, the teams that have looked the best in terms of if you were to just judge them every week are Penn State and Washington, believe it or not. I mean, they've looked terrific every time they've stepped out on the field. But everybody else has shown, at times. And is that because they're bored with the schedule they're playing? Is it because, Nick Saban famously said that you need your A game like 4 times a year. And it's tough to get a team's A game more than 4 times a year. But in the society that we're in right now, if a team goes out and gives a B performance or a B- performance, we jump all over them. Well, I mean, listen, if we were told this was the greatest show in the history of mankind, we might start mailing it in from time to time too, because we're patting ourselves on the back. And this happens to these players too. So I'm just curious that, hopefully good week of practice. The other thing we got to keep in mind, this Florida team's got to stay healthy. They don't have the depth yet in a lot of spots that they're going to have next year and the year after. Yeah. That tailback needs to stay healthy. That quarterback needs to stay healthy. Their top wide receiver needs to stay healthy. 2 of those defensive linemen really need to stay healthy. I mean, it looks like they're starting to establish some difference makers, but they only got a handful of them, and they need to go the distance.
Not so much of a next man up type of a situation for them. In a lot
Not
of
yet.
Decisions.
In
year 2 or 3,
away.
Yeah. Well, we only have a few minutes left, and I really wanted to ask David about Tennessee getting a lot of knocks. That this team is just not that good, which is what you hear a lot of different times. And I think we've talked about Florida being, this is just a good win no matter what. But is Tennessee really bad, David, do you think?
Well, I think, and I'm not taking anything away from the Gators at all.
No.
But what Florida had walking into Utah, Tennessee had a little bit of walking into the swamp. Florida was missing their center, and they had a bunch of new linemen. Well, Tennessee was missing 2 starters on the offensive line, and the Gators whooped them up front. Tennessee couldn't run the ball. Well, even with their passing attack, which Florida has seen now for a couple years, and this head coach had saw last year with inferior personnel this year than what they had last year. So once Tennessee's offensive line started getting whooped, basically Florida looked at them and said, you guys are going to have a long night. And so that, to me, Tennessee, I want to see what they look like when they get their 2 starters back, and can they start running the football? They've yet to do that this year. If they're just going to be Joe Milton throwing it all over the lot, they're a 7-8 win team.
Well, weren't they the number 1 rushing team in the SEC when Florida played? Small sample size. I believe they were.
But look at who they played, and also that was with the 2 linemen that they didn't have against Florida.
I just think we can't have it both ways, right? Prior to this game, there was Gator fans, there was national media saying, part of the pressure on Napier is because of the success that Heupel has had immediately at Tennessee. And, now that we've beaten Tennessee, the narrative has turned to Tennessee's not a very good football team. Right. And I'm not sure that we get to have it both ways.
Exactly. Exactly, Allie.
And I think Tennessee wins probably 8 or 9 games, if I had to guess, depending on what ends up happening with Milton. I had a beat writer on last week who was telling me that I was crazy for thinking we could potentially have the best running back duo in the SEC because Tennessee so clearly had the best running back.
What happened to them?
In the SEC? He hasn't answered my tweets since the game has ended, surprisingly. So, I think this is a good team. I think I'm glad we got them when we did because they'll probably continue to improve as the season goes on. They are a well-coached team, but I don't think it's necessary to take anything away from this win for Florida.
No,
this was number 11 team in the country, and it was a good win. Now, we don't need to
rivalry win, too, which is huge for Billy to get off the schneid there.
I mean, Tennessee has beaten Florida 5 times since 1953 in the Swamp. We've continued with the psychological warfare of that, which is, a win for Billy Napier. And he's 1-0 against our rivals. So I think we celebrate it, and then you compartmentalize it and you move on. And honestly, I hope Tennessee does great the rest of the year. That would look wonderful.
Good. Yeah.
I got an idea going out, if I may say so. Pick your team, biggest surprise, worst or best. What team is the biggest surprise, bad or good for you? I'll start. Texas A&M sucks, okay? They haven't got it right yet. I think they're one of the biggest flops in college football. I don't know if they're going to turn around or not. Jimbo Fisher may be on the proverbial hot seat, despite what we say about that. That's my pick. What's yours, Allie, for the best or worst?
Bama, honestly.
Yeah,
I honestly thought Saban would come out after Georgia won that 2 in a row, just, lighting the world on fire because he was pissed that in the offseason people talked about, is Georgia now the king of the SEC? And we haven't seen Alabama play well yet, really.
David?
Colorado.
Best.
They won one game last year. They were lucky to win it. And he replaced 86 players. 86
Wow.
players. And they opened the year at the team that lost the national championship game last year and won.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to continue. I didn't, but for the record, their over-under was 3.5. And I leaned
on that.
and I leaned under. Because I thought,
Really?
well, they're losing to TCU, and I even think they're losing to Nebraska. They'll beat Colorado State, and this is the best Pac-12 in 15 years.
Yeah.
And they'll be lucky to win 2 games. So that adds up to 3. To me, I thought the Nebraska game was to determine whether or not they were going to win 3 or 4 games this year. So
honest man right there. Brenden, what's yours?
Florida State. I feel like Florida State came out such a strong win early on. I think they're a much better team, at least than I thought. I think there's someone on your schedule that you're not excited to play. I think, that's a game at the end of the year for Gator fan. That's, you're excited to have them in the Swamp. I think you hold your breath a little bit.
Listen, Gators fans, you got to root for Florida State Saturday.
Yeah, you do.
Because then you have a chance to play them when they're 11-0.
And that's what you want.
Okay?
Yeah.
And there'll be 1 or 2, no worse than 3 in the country. And that's what I think you want. Because also and that's how you want to set them up too. You want them coming in 11-0.
No question. Yeah.
Okay.
Great stuff from the sweet and sour team tonight. I got to tell you guys, good job. Good job, Alec David.
Yeah, by the way, this show last week, highest rated show of the week. Everyone loved you guys. So thank you. And
was I on it? Maybe I wasn't on it. That was why.
Buddy was on it and everything else. Buddy said we got to get him to Dr. Phil. Hey, listen, David, thank you very much for showing. David, tell the people out there where they can find you and listen to more David Molten.
The local bar.
Right. FloridaSportsNetwork.com. And hopefully negotiating with WRUF in Gainesville.
We keep waiting. We're waiting.
Yeah, so am I, buddy.
I know,
so am I.
I know how long you've been waiting too. So
I'll have to strong go up to Gainesville, strong arm a few guys for you there, David. But thank you for your time. We will see you next. Oh, where are you going this week? Where's your next travel?
Well, that's a little controversial. CBS sent Brad and Gary to the Iowa Penn State game instead of Ole Miss Alabama. That's going over very well in SEC country.
Yikes!
Hey, Alex, thanks for hanging.
Thank you, David.
Bedtime for your kids. All right. Appreciate it.
Allie, tell everybody where they can find you on YouTube.
A peek inside Gator football. Come on and hang out and check out some of the videos.
But they just Google they Google Peek Inside Gator football.
You go to YouTube, you can search a Peek Inside.
She's everywhere. She's everywhere. They all know where she is.
Yeah, but you got to go smash that subscribe button for the Peek Inside Florida football. Thank you, Allie. Always love having you on. We will see you next week. Have a great night. Thank you. All right. Buddy, you want to tell the folks about RenStar?
I do want to tell folks about RenStar because you have great, talented people who do so much in the community and sponsor this show as they've done, I think, Brenden, for almost 7 years. I want to thank them for their participation and their support of this program and for doing a great job in our community. That'll be RenStar Medical Research. They have a high-quality, patient-centered clinical research facility They bring cutting-edge clinical research trials to account over 700 years, and they look at things like psoriasis, Alzheimer's, osteoarthritis, migraine headaches, along with many other conditions that affect us right here in this community. They also want you to come take part in these trials because that your DNA gets in there, and it's what they want when they do their trials. And they take this information and send it to top-notch biomedical pharmaceutical companies and throughout the medical industry. So check them out if you want to be part of it. Want to see if you're eligible to join. In some cases, time and travel are compensated for. Go to renstar.net and check it out. Renstar Medical Research. I'm waiting.
I know. I'm trying to time you out.
Renstar Medical Research.
Seeking
tomorrow's
answer
to
the
health
questions
of today.
All
right, good show, Brenden. Good show, guys.
All right, Dad, thanks for coming on. When you're playing hurt, have a good night. Thank you. And I thank all you all for hanging with us this week. Thanks for coming on, all 85 of you. Hey, really, before you go, make sure you smash the subscribe button. It's down there over there. Smash it up. Subscribe to us. I don't think if you know this, but that's how YouTube works. And then we make a little bit of cash from that. You don't have to give us cash for us to make cash. Thanks to Joe Blackbird tonight who hooked us up on the super chat. $9. We have $10 or $20 this week. That buys a lot of beers. Tomorrow night, Orange and Blue Blood show. It's going to be Franz Beard, Buddy Martin, myself. We've got who else comes? I think Kyle Curtis comes on. I don't know. Then we've got I don't know if we got Ben, but I think Ben might be on tomorrow night. So, but anyways, check us out. Same time, same channel. Go on there. By the way, tell people about our Facebook channel. Check out at the Buddy Martin Show, or just go to Facebook, the Buddy Martin Show. We got all sorts of videos and stuff there from the game. By the way, there's other videos on this channel that you can check out. That is pretty awesome. I shot all sorts of stuff at the end of the game last week. I've got like 3 minutes of the end of the game, but I saw Billy Napier chasing, yelling at me, get off the field. All sorts of good stuff. So you can go to the YouTube channel, The Buddy Martin Show, and check out the other videos. It's pretty awesome. And, remember our mothership station, which is always going to be what we do the most and do the best of, is GatorBaitMedia.com. Right now, not going to stop running the special, because right now that special is lucky. That's like stepping on the foul line when you're running out of the dugout. That's like, I don't know, superstition, whatever you think of. But listen, you can go right now. Go to GatorBaitMedia.com, all access, subscribe, and go to all access annual. That's a whole year of GatorBaitMedia.com for Buddy Martin, Franz Beard, and the cast of thousands. Great articles. I think we've had at least 15 articles since Monday. So we're averaging 3 to 5 a day. Plus, we've got an awesome interactive chat. An app that I've been working on. That for your mobile app, which makes it much easier to get on. You go to the message boards. It's got all the stuff that you need. Yes. So that's it for us tonight. That's it for me tonight. Glad to have Budrow back. It's always good to have him out off the injured reserve. And it's always good to have you all join us. I think we had a great number tonight. Make sure you come back tomorrow night. And as always, go Gators!